Matthew Stafford has now gotten the chance to play in Ford Field twice since being traded to the Rams 3 years ago. Despite a Super Bowl ring and plenty of success for Stafford in LA, his predecessor in Detroit has now gotten the best of him multiple times in the past year. With that being said, I know you were underappreciated in LA, but you're good enough for Detroit, Jared Goff. This is Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison, and your Detroit Lions are 1-0 to start the season. Let's take a look at what went well in this game, some things that we need to work on headed into next week's matchup versus Tampa Bay, and some players that showed out in week one. Let's get right into it. So, what went well for this team? Just right away, I think that the glaring advantage that the Lions had in this game was that offensive line. You could just see throughout the game, the D line for LA, they held tough. I know they've had some injuries. They had Aaron Donald leave this offseason to retirement, and there's just a lot of changes going on with that LA defense. So they're coming in on a new year and playing against the Lions offensive line in your first game with a very, very new defensive front. It's tough to do. And I credit LA for sticking in there throughout the game, but you could just see they were just wearing them down. And then in that final drive, we ran the ball 7 out of 8 plays, and it was just night and day the difference in the first quarter in overtime with how much that offensive line was getting a push off the ball. You could see it specifically the right side of the offensive line with Kevin Zeitler and Penei Sewell. They were just blowing LA off the ball, giving David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs tons of room to work with, and we took advantage. As you can see throughout that game, David Montgomery was continuing to get more comfortable, starting to break bigger, more chunk play runs, and it was just, again, like I said, and I'll reiterate it a million times, that the defensive line was just getting worn out. And that is expected from this offensive line. I think that that's their bread and butter. And throughout the year, we're going to lean on teams until they eventually break. And that's what they did. I mean, you could just see on the final play from the 1 yard line, LA had no chance of stopping David Montgomery on that run. They didn't even hardly try. I think they kind of had realized at that point the game was over. So just great stuff all around from that offensive line. I absolutely love the crew that they've built. Despite losing Jonah Jackson to LA in free agency this year, it's just so fun to watch. Dudes just absolutely move these other guys. The guys are 6'4", 280 pounds plus, and Penei Sewell, Kevin Zeitler, Graham Glasgow, Taylor Decker, they are moving people, and it's just fun to watch. It's fun to watch an offensive line that is competent. The Lions have not had that in the past. Matthew Stafford knows that firsthand, and it's just refreshing. So good stuff all around from the offensive line group and the running back crew. Um, the final drive recap. I mean, if you want to give this Lions team an identity, that last drive sums it up perfectly. You run the ball 7 times, you throw the ball 1 time on a little dump down pass to Jahmyr Gibbs, who takes it for 10 yards, and you end up winning the game. I mean, David Montgomery was just unbelievable in that drive. He put together, I think he had what, 5 or 6 runs. He had a couple chunk plays for 6 yards, a couple plays for nine, one that he broke out for 21 yards, and then eventually, obviously, he caps off the drive with a 1 yard touchdown of his own. So, just overall, that last drive was peak Detroit Lions football. Just run it down your throat, and if you can stop it, go ahead and try, but we're not gonna do anything differently. We're gonna show you exactly what we're gonna do, and we're gonna continue to do that. So just unbelievable play calling on that last drive. I mean, I get it. You want to be flashy. You want to open up the playbook and start slinging the rock. But if you don't need to, don't. In that situation where a touchdown wins the game, why risk turning the ball over? Why throw the ball away into double coverage and give the defense a chance to get bailed out? It is just so unbelievable to watch this team operate, drive in and drive out, especially when it comes down to the game being on the line. So just all around, shout out Ben Johnson, shout out the O line, shout out the running back crew, shout out Jared Goff. Just everything about that final drive was just beautiful. And it was just peak football and peak Lions football. So great stuff from that. Just unbelievable way to start the season. And yeah, we're looking good. That was unbelievable. So And then I kind of wanted to touch on some defensive stuff. I know the offense wasn't great, so I will touch on what kind of went poorly throughout the game a little bit later. I don't want to be too negative. I want to focus on the positives, but I will discuss that a little bit more in depth. So, but right now, let's talk about that defense. Especially early on in the game. This LA offense is always going to be potent. They have weapons. Puka Nacua obviously goes out with an injury, and that limits their offensive potential. But they still have Tutu Atwell. They still have Demarcus Robinson. They still have guys who are able to make plays, and they did that. They moved the ball around a little bit more when Puka kind of went out. Obviously, Cooper Kupp was their go-to guy. He had 14 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Tyler Johnson had the 63-yard screen pass that he took. That was a big momentum shifter in LA's favor. Obviously, Kobe Parkinson, who I talked about in the preview, talked about how he might not be involved in the pass game, ended up with 4 catches for 47 yards and had a couple really, really key third down conversions for LA. So, regardless of Puka Nacua going out, Demarcus Robinson stepped up, Kobe Parkinson, Tyler Johnson, Cooper Kupp, those guys were able to step up in the passing game, and they were still very, very effective throughout the entirety of this matchup. So they were good, but the fact that we played bend don't break defense helped us tremendously, especially throughout the first half. You have multiple drives where LA is able to, 13 plays, 67 yards that you force them into a field goal early on in the game. We have a 3-and-out right away. It allows LA to get comfortable and they go down and they can only get 3 out of that. That was huge. That was a big momentum shifter because it allowed the Lions to come back on the field, go down, tie up the ball game with a field goal of their own. So just a great red zone stop, forcing them into the field goal on the third down play. They run the ball just to kind of set up a easier conversion due to the Levi Onwuzurike sack earlier on in the possession, and you hold them to 3 and you play bend don't break. And then just some amazing plays by our secondary. And obviously, if you've been a Lions fan for the past couple of years, we haven't been able to say that a lot of times. It's been a lot of, well, maybe if the secondary would have been able to make that play, we could have squeaked out the NFC Championship game, or we could have squeaked out the Seattle game early on in the season last year. So the fact that our secondary was throughout the first half, the catalyst for this entire team was just awesome to see. Obviously, Carlton Davis makes just an incredible play, breaking up the fourth down conversion attempt on 4th and 4 from the Detroit 23. They try to squeeze it into Cooper Kupp. Carlton Davis gets a hand in there, makes a great play, knocks the ball out, turnover on downs. So obviously it's not an interception or a fumble or a flashy turnover, but it gets the job done. You get your offense back on the field. So shout out Carlton Davis. He's the veteran in that group. And just watching him make plays, I know he struggled a little bit. He had a couple missed tackles. He had a couple breakdowns in coverage. But he did make some really crucial plays, highlighted by that pass deflection early on a very crucial fourth down stop. So good stuff from Carlton right there. And then I think it was in that drive, I believe that Brian Branch also has a pass deflection that was very crucial to getting that stop. Cooper Kupp runs a little out route. Lions are in a zone. Brian Branch is able to read it perfectly, jumps the route. If he's a half second earlier, he might take that to the crib, but he gets a hand on it, knocks it down. And that was just a big play because if Cooper Kupp catches that ball, there is no safety over top to stop him from getting to the end zone. That is a 40-yard touchdown. And this game's kind of wide open at that point if Cooper Kupp is able to make that play. So Brian Branch just with an unbelievable pass deflection to kind of set up that fourth down stop was a thing of beauty. So shout out to Brian Branch on that one. And then finally in the secondary, everybody knows him, everybody loves him. Kerby Joseph, just making Kerby Joseph type plays. Last year when Kerby Joseph had that hit on Tyler Higbee, Matthew Stafford called him a dirty player. He said it straight up to his face, and the mic'd up, you can hear it. He says to Kerby Joseph, "You're a dirty player. I get it. You have to make those hits, but that's a dirty hit, and you know it." And Kerby Joseph is not a dirty player. If you think he's a dirty player, you clearly never played a snap of football. He is he's tackling the way he's taught to be tackled. You're supposed to go low. You cannot go high anymore. The league has made that very abundantly clear. And so Kirby Joseph goes low. Obviously, with TJ Hawkinson, with Tyler Higbee last year, those players got injured due to those tackles, but it's not Kirby's fault that the NFL doesn't allow you to hit high anymore. They're doing what they're supposed to do, especially as a smaller defender, as a guy who plays safety. He's not just going to allow himself to get rolled over. He's going to go low and he's going to take out the legs. And that's what he did that last year. So I think it's really unfair for Matthew Stafford to call him out and call him a dirty player. And Kirby Joseph got the last laugh. Matthew Stafford tries to hit a window that realistically wasn't there. Just a bad play in general, in my opinion. Tries to fit it into a gap. And because we masked our man-to-man in our zone very well, it allowed Kirby Joseph to kind of sit in that zone in the back of the end zone. And the receiver kind of gets left on by the outside corner. I believe it was Carlton Davis. And it just feeds right to where Kirby Joseph's going to go. Clearly, Matthew Stafford didn't see him underneath. And Kirby just makes one of the most important plays of the game, because if they score there, their momentum is just they match our touchdown drive that we had previously, and it's a 10-10 ball game going into halftime. So just great all around activity from Kirby Joseph, disguising that zone very well and making a play, because we know he makes plays. And we know that he does that. He is very frustrating for quarterbacks. We saw it firsthand with Aaron Rodgers. And it's just great to see Kirby coming back in his third year, kind of one of those veterans in that secondary. Him and Carlton Davis are two of the players that have played the longest in that secondary, and just showing the young guys how to make a play. So again, bend don't break on two defensive drives with the fourth down stop and the interception in the red zone. Just really culminated the first half for this defense. I think it was very, very encouraging for Aaron Glenn and the defensive staff to see those guys make those stops on plays that last year would not have been stops and would have most likely resulted in points. So just great stuff. I'm really high on this defensive back room, despite how young they are, because they held their own against a very potent offensive attack yesterday, especially through the air. So great stuff all around from the defensive back room. And yeah, let's just move on. Let's get into some more good stuff that went on this game. Another thing that I had written down that I wanted to discuss was the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery snap distribution. I know in my preview I talked about it, how it's probably going to be very similar to 50-50, similar to last year, and I think that's kind of how it went. I think we used the running backs when we wanted to use them, when it was specifically geared towards their skill set, and it worked out great. You know, you've got lightning and thunder. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who can get out on the edge and make a play in the open field. And then you have David Montgomery, who just wears you down, who can get 3 snaps in a row and get 12 yards. It's very, very fun to watch these two running backs in their differences in skill set, but also watching how productive they are throughout the game. So I think it honestly ended up probably being 55-45 Jahmyr Gibbs, but neither of those players are complaining. They don't care about the individual statistics. They don't care about who's getting the touches and who's not. They just want to win ball games. So Jahmyr Gibbs kind of taking over that receiving back role, still getting some carries up the middle, but Demont primarily being that ground and pound running back just allows Gibbs to be so dynamic and make plays on the outside. And that's what he did throughout the entire game. He was great in the passing game. He was solid in the run game. You know, he only had 40 yards on 11 carries, but David Montgomery kind of carried the bulk of the load in the running game with 17 carries, 91 yards and a touchdown. And then Jahmyr Gibbs still, you know, with 4 catches, 34 yards, 11 carries, 40 yards and a touchdown. He's never going to be a guy that's going to go off for 200 total yards from scrimmage, but he's going to be just effective enough on 15 touches that he's going to make an impact on a game. So Jahmyr Gibbs with 15 touches, David Montgomery gets 18 touches, and that's kind of how we should expect this offense to run for the rest of this year. It's going to be very running back by committee, and in that running game, man, it looked very hard to stop. I mean, we averaged 5.3 yards a carry all on the day with a long of 21 yards. That was our longest run. So just being able to have 31 carries for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns throughout a game for your running core. That's not insane, and it's never going to be the most unbelievable statistic group, but I mean, we're not that type of team. We're never going to be super one-dimensional. We're going to move the ball around through the air and on the ground, and that's what we did yesterday. So shout out the running back group. Just shout out the coaching staff for getting those guys prepared. I know we haven't seen Gibbs or Demont in live game action all offseason. Neither of them played in the preseason, but they looked in midseason form. So awesome to see. Love the energy from Demont and Gibbs on their runs, and it's going to be fun to watch throughout the rest of the season. Um, oh yeah. So I mean, I already talked about Kirby Joseph disguising his coverage on the interception was great. You know, he's a very free roaming player in that defense. He doesn't have a ton of specific assignments, but rather just create havoc, and that's what he did on that interception. So love to see it from Kirby. And then just cinema. Just beautiful. It's like going to a museum and just seeing an amazing painting and you're not able to look away. That JMO touchdown, the route that he had, just Tre'Davious White had no chance on that play. It was a beautiful route, beautiful ball, perfectly executed, exactly at the right time of the game when you have man coverage with an older defender. Jamison Williams is the fastest player in the NFL. In my opinion, I think he's faster than Xavier Worthy, but either way, JMO is just one of the most explosive players in this league, and he was on display today. The JMO touchdown, he kind of gets Tre'Davious White. He bites on a curl route, and then JMO just takes off. So JMO does a little stutter step about 10 yards off the line, and Tre'Davious White, his feet get planted, and once your feet get planted as a defender when you're guarding Jamison Williams, it's over. I mean, Tre'Davious White still even had to grab him and commit a pass interference. But Chamo, it didn't matter. Chamo was gone, and he had about 10 steps into the end zone. And that was that. That was our biggest explosive play on the day. It was Jared Goff's only touchdown on the day, but just beautiful play call, beautiful ball. And I'm definitely going to be watching that play over and over and over again this week, and I'm sure you guys will be as well because that was electric. So great stuff all around from JMO throughout the day. I'll touch on him a little bit later in the episode, but just wanted to kind of highlight that specific play. So yeah, I mean, one pass play on the final drive, 7 run plays. It's just poetry. Watching that O-line work is just poetry in motion. And even when it's not pretty, you find a way to win. That was not a pretty win by any means. It was kind of rough at times throughout the game. Offense seemed very stagnant at times, but when it came down to brass tacks, when it came down to getting it done, they did. It was just beautiful to watch that final drive unfold because you just knew once they started running the ball, they were not going to stop. It was a ball that was rolling and there was nothing that was going to stop it. It was pretty fun to watch. So good stuff there. Last thing I wanted to touch on that went well, I thought, was just the 7 TFLs to LA's 3. I feel like in the past we've had trouble bringing guys down in the backfield and creating negative plays, but that was not the case yesterday. We had 7 TFLs led by Alex Anzalone's 3. It was you could just see the penetration in the backfield was different this year. I don't think that last year we had the ability to do that. And this year you saw cornerbacks flying off the edge. You saw Terrion Arnold flying off the edge, Brian Branch flying off the edge. Obviously, Alex Anzalone was just creating havoc in the middle and just absolutely stuffing the run game. It was beautiful. I mean, Kyron Williams, he ended up having 50 yards on 18 carries on a 2.8 average. That's terrible. His long was 9. He didn't even break a 10 plus yard run on the day for a guy who is looked at to be one of the most explosive running backs in the entire NFL. So awesome to see the linebacker core, Jack Campbell as well, just kind of shut down that run game and force Matthew Stafford to use his arm to make plays. So great stuff. I love the penetration in the backfield and creating negative plays is a big thing for a defense who might have some holes in the secondary or some holes on that D line. Just being able to make up for it with just energy and momentum shifting plays is very big for this defense. I want to touch on things that went poorly. I'm gonna just make this a quick little segment because it's a win and a win's a win. I don't want to dwell on the past, but I do kind of want to talk about things that we're gonna have to shore up if we want to, reach the expectations we have this season. Right away, four three and outs. And I know, I understand four three and outs. It happens. It's football. That's just not great though for an offense who relies so heavily on the run game to have three and outs, you want to be able to flip the field, especially with a punter like Jack Fox. If you're at the 30-yard line and you have a three and out, it's a lot harder to flip the field than if you're at the 42-yard line. Even 12 yards of field position, gaining one or two more first downs, it helps flip that field and force Matthew Stafford in the LA offense to play a little bit behind the sticks and from the 10-yard line, create a larger field that they have to go down in order to score points, especially when you're kind of controlling a game. And yeah, we had four three and outs kind of scattered throughout. I know it was possession number one was a three and out, and then another couple possessions down the line there was another one. Throughout the second half there was a couple, and it's concerning for sure. But it is the first game of the year, and we still did come out on top. So the offense was not great. I didn't love the Ben Johnson play calling until that final drive, but I mean, regardless, a win's a win. The offense looked good enough to compete, and that's what they did. So we're gonna have to shore that up. But you can't have four three and outs when you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs or when you're playing the San Francisco 49ers. They will take advantage of that. So just got to shore that up. We'll have more time throughout the year to get that right. We play a Tampa Bay team who is decent, but I don't think that their defense is nearly as good as it was last year. So we'll be able to shore that up, and I think next week you'll see a lot more explosive plays and just the offense staying on the field for longer periods of time. Um, and then we just allowed LA to get too comfortable in the offense. They were knocking on the door way too many times. We couldn't get off the field on third down. It felt like every single time they had a third down, they just went straight to Cooper Kupp, and we weren't making adjustments. So I just think that we allowed Matthew Stafford to get too comfortable where they had a chance to win the game. They were up with 2 minutes left to go. They had an 80% chance with 4:20 or with 2:46 left to go in the game. So they uh, they had opportunities, and I think we allowed them to have a lot more opportunities than they realistically would have come up with on their own. So we just gotta limit the damage, and that's what we did. We bend don't break. But it would be nice to force some more punts and not have as many nail biting fourth down plays at the 15-yard line, and just kind of figure out a way to shut down their offense a little bit earlier in the drive than later. Regardless, though, I'm not going to complain. Some great fourth down stops. The interception was perfect. We had some very, very impressive stops especially in the beginning of that game. Um, yeah, and then, allowing them to put together an 11 play, 70-yard drive right after a touchdown drive of our own, it's just a momentum killer. You get up 10 to 3 or 17 to 3, excuse me, and then you allow them to drive down and it's 17 to 10 just like that. So the defense has to learn to build off of the offensive momentum. We have to figure out a way when the offense scores, they don't have to wait another 7 minutes to get back on the field. They only have to wait 2 minutes because the defense is able to get a stop early. So just figuring out ways to slow down the offensive firepower of another team, especially after we score points of our own, is going to be really big for this squad, especially in games where you're playing playoff caliber teams like Tampa Bay and Dallas and Green Bay and Buffalo. So we'll see how that kind of plays out throughout the rest of the year, but nothing too much to worry about because we did get stops, but definitely something that's going to have to be shored up. The golf interception, I don't want to focus on it too much. You're trying to fit it into Amon-Ra. You're trying to get Amon-Ra involved after he had a very, very rough outing yesterday. And you're trying to get him the ball. You're trying to get your playmaker the ball, and doesn't work out. The safety did a great job just staying in his zone, and Amon-Ra just kind of let his route way too far, and Jared Goff ended up trying to fit it into a window that wasn't necessarily open. So you got to shore that up. Goff, you can't be throwing those picks. You're a game managing quarterback. If you're throwing one or two picks a game, that's very, very hard for a defense to make up for. So we'll figure that out. We'll shore that up. And Amon-Ra, his struggles yesterday are nothing to be concerned about. It was Jameson Williams Day. It was the game plan was to get our speedsters the ball and run the ball. And Amon-Ra just wasn't a part of that. He will be in future games, and I can promise that. So, fantasy managers, I know. Take a deep breath. It's gonna be all right. Promise. um, Too many penalties on defensive pass interference. I know Terrion Arnold's a very young corner. He was in his very first NFL game, having to guard Cooper Kupp for a majority of the outing. And there was just a couple times where he got too handsy. He didn't turn his head to the ball. In textbook, that's defensive pass interference. So he'll get more comfortable as he practices more and gets more reps against very, very solid receivers like Cooper Kupp. So I'm not too worried about that. He will have to be locked in next week, though, against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Both those guys were unbelievable this week for Tampa Bay. Granted, they were playing Washington, who is not good by any stretch of the imagination. So Terrion Arnold's going to have to lock in. I know Carlton Davis is going to get him right. Carlton Davis playing against his old team. He's going to provide a ton of good insight for some of those young corners like Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. And I'm sure that Terrion's going to kind of fix up those defensive pass interference, and that won't be a problem as he gets more comfortable in the defense. Another thing I wanted to touch on, just offense getting bailed out by defense all game was not ideal considering the identity of this team. I know we are a ground and pound. We are a team that's not super flashy. We have flashy playmakers, but we're never gonna, unless it's JMO, we're not gonna beat you with 4-3 speed most of the time. So it's tough to see, when we have those three and outs, when we have those drives that stall, it's tough to see the defense kind of on the back of their heels. But the fact that they were able to make plays was huge. It's just we don't want that to be the case throughout this season. We don't want it to be on the defense's shoulders to make stops in order for us to have chances to win games. And then obviously, the defense did have that stop late in the fourth quarter, so that LA did not have the chance to run out the clock, and Detroit was able to get the ball back. So that was great. But again, like I said, the offense has to pick it up and cut the defense some slack. So we'll take what we can get. Defense playing well, but offense is going to have to be definitely more efficient than it was this week if we want a chance to pull off a pretty historic season. Pursuit angles on tackles were terrible. My buddy Bobby texted us during the game, and it was exactly what I was thinking. It was just, what were we doing? I felt like every single time a receiver for the Rams was getting a ball across the middle, they were turning it up for another 10, 15 yards because our pursuit angles are terrible. Brian Branch multiple times was just, he was overrunning the tackle multiple different times. He just needed to slow down and get more comfortable and break down, and that's going to be definitely something that Aaron Glenn works on this week, no doubt in my mind. But we're going to have to fix that up because a 63-yard screen pass, really? That was awful. I mean, we had 3 or 4 guys have a chance to make a tackle, and neither of them could get him on the ground. Especially considering I'd never even heard of this guy before going to the game, Tyler Johnson. And he has a 63-yard gain on a screen pass. So we just need to shore that up and make sure that we are, even if they do have a 15-yard gain, get them on the ground. It doesn't matter. You don't have to jar the ball loose. You don't have to strip the ball. You don't have to make a big hit. Just get them on the ground. And that's all that really matters. So that will be something we work on this week for sure. And hopefully next week, playing against 2 really good receivers after the catch in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, we're going to have to be able to get them on the ground. So we'll see how that looks. And I'll preview that more towards the end of this week. But that's kind of all I really had for things that didn't go great. I know a win's a win, but in a win where you struggled a little bit here and there, it was just nice to see us kind of. Well, I guess it wasn't nice for us to see us. It was not nice to see us miss a lot of tackles. I know last year we had the same problems, but defensive secondary is going to have to be able to make tackles, especially with our lack of pass rush. So we'll move on from that, and let's just talk about some players that showed out. I had 4 guys that really I thought deserved game balls. I know Jameson Williams and Alex Anzalone both got game balls from Dan Campbell, but there was the offensive line group as a whole, and some other guys that I'll touch on in a sec, played really, really crucial roles in this game, and if without them, we wouldn't have won. So first one, Jameson Williams, his route running and just his spatial awareness and the speed on the edge is just worlds ahead of where it was even last season. You can just see how comfortable he is in that offense. He knows what routes to run and how to run his routes against his zone. He knows when they're playing man coverage, he can beat a linebacker every time. And he just looked very, very comfortable in his route running. And just his ability to make plays is on full display. And even though LA is fully aware of his big playability, they still could not neutralize him. It was his best game of his career by far with 5 catches, 121 yards, a touchdown on 9 targets. Like, it is just beautiful to watch Jameson Williams play football. He's so fluid in his motions. Everything he does, just you can just see he just bleeds football. He's just such an incredible athlete that he's going to be such a special player in this league for years to come. And I'm just glad he's proven everybody wrong. A lot of Twitter warriors were kind of hating on Jameson Williams on the offseason. A lot of Vikings and Bears and Packers fans were not sold on Jameson Williams being legit, and I think that they might be going back and deleting some tweets after last night's game. um, so yeah, shout out to Jameson Williams, just an all-around incredible game. He picked up where Amon-Ra kind of struggled and Sam Laporta struggled, and that's what I talked about in episodes past. Allowing Jameson Williams to kind of take over that number 2 receiver role, it relieves Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta of those 10, 12, 13 target games, and it gives them a chance to kind of breathe and just be smoke and mirrors in the offense for a change of scenery. Amon-Ra St. Brown is still always he's gonna draw so much attention from the defense that if we can get Amon-Ra St. Brown, or if we can get Jameson Williams, excuse me, involved in this offense, it's just going to make Amon-Ra St. Brown that much more effective and vice versa. So, good stuff from JMO. Alex Anzalone was a man on a mission last night. Dude, he was on fire. Watching him fly around out there was night and day from last year. I know last year he had a lot better season than in years past, but man, you can just see, even with age, Alex Anzalone is just getting so much better. And he's getting way more comfortable in the Aaron Glenn defense. He is now that kind of catalyst on defense that we've been looking for out of the linebacker position. And it's just so refreshing to watch him just make play after play. 3 tackles for loss, 10 solo tackles, 13 total tackles. He is a prototypical middle linebacker in the NFL, and it's just amazing to watch him kind of get into that mid-season form early on in the season. David Montgomery, just being himself warrants being talked about. Just chunk play after chunk play. Just wearing down the defense like I talked about in the open. He is just a man on a mission, just like Alex Anzalone was. They are 2 of the most physically imposing players I've ever seen on an NFL roster. And it helps that they go at it in practice every single week. Those are the running back and the linebacker are pretty much mirrors of each other on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And I know those guys have had some battles because they were both just hitting ridiculously hard, and David Montgomery was eating up extra yards after contact, and Alex Anzalone was doing the opposite. He was getting guys down before they could, break free and gain extra yards after contact. So good stuff from Alex Anzalone and David Montgomery, 2 of just the most physically imposing players on this team and in the NFL. So really, really fun to watch that kind of unfold yesterday as our token presence in the league is we're a gritty team and we're going to come at you and we're going to punch you in the mouth. So having Alex Anzalone and D-Met at the center of all of that is just awesome to watch. And then the last person, I know a lot of Michigan State fans who clearly don't know much about football were ripping on Aiden Hutchinson for not being as effective throughout the game and not getting sacks. Stats, box score watchers are in shambles because Aiden Hutchinson was relentless. He was just abusing that Rams O-line. You could throw a double team on him, it didn't matter. He was getting to the quarterback every single time he rushed the passer. Obviously, he only got home 1 time, which was a really crucial play in the 4th quarter, sacking Matthew Stafford. And I just thought that his motor looked incredible. He was on the field for a majority of the snaps. He didn't look too gassed throughout the game. He was just as explosive, snap one to snap 50. He was just again, a man on a mission. And I think that getting DJ Reader back, getting Marcus Davenport more comfortable in the defense, the resurgence of Aleem McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike is only going to help Hutch. And it's just so fun to watch him come into his own in year three and just be a Nick Bosa or a Miles Garrett or a Micah Parsons who just creates havoc and can open up a game by himself. So love to see that from Hutch, and hopefully we get a 14, 15 sack season from our number two pick, homegrown Michigan guy, Aiden Hutchinson. That's kind of all I really have on this game. I thought that it was okay performance all around. I thought there was a lot of stuff that could have gone better, and but at the end of the day, a win's a win. It's a week one game. There's gonna be some blunders here and there, and we're gonna have to fix those up this week and come out next week against Tampa Bay with the same energy and the same just willingness to run it down your throat and punch you in the mouth. And that's it's kind of the identity of this team. So it'll be fun to watch as that unfolds the rest of this year. And that's kind of all I have. I want to talk. I'll do another episode on Thursday, most likely, kind of previewing Tampa Bay, talking about kind of what could go, or some people to watch and some players to watch, some keys to victory. And yeah, we'll keep up with the 2 episode a week format that we've been doing. And that's all I have. Yeah, this has been Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. We'll catch you guys on Thursday. Peace.